Greetings fellow Mist Wanderers, my name is Steve Morgan and this is DM of the Mists, covering all things Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. In this video I want to give a quick run through and demo and overview of Curse of Strahd and Roll20, mostly because that's what I use when I ran Curse of Strahd for my players, kind of know Roll20 quite well, and in addition to giving kind of like a sort of demo overview type thing, I wanted to share some tips, some stuff to watch out for, things you might want to consider changing, things you might want to consider adding, plus there's some sort of more general FAQs at the end. A couple of disclaimers before we begin. I don't use all of Roll20's features. For example, I don't use its character sheets. Me and my players tend to use D&D Beyond. I don't use macros. We don't roll within Roll20. We use a plugin called Beyond 20 that allows you to roll from a D&D Beyond character sheet or stat block straight into Roll20, so we tend to use that. So I might not show some stuff. I also don't really use the compendium much because I have things like the book, Curse of Strahd, or the box set as you can see behind me here, and same with Van Richten's guide. So I tend not to really dive into the compendium much, but I will show a little bit, but there might be some tricks I'm missing that you guys maybe can show me by telling me in the comments. But I want to be upfront about that. I didn't want to like try and show you and fumble through it and get things wrong. I'll show you most of what's there, but not the stuff I don't really use. Oh, also, there's no paid promo here. Roll20 haven't given me the module. They haven't paid me to do it. I already owned it. I wanted to share this because I thought it would be useful for DMs. People considering buying it on Roll20 but want to see what it's like before they do. Or people who already own it but want to see the tips. Let's get to it. Okay, here we are on Roll20 with Curse of Strahd. This is the landing page when you boot up a game. This is my first time doing a screen share video with my face in the corner, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully my head, I've got one screen over here and one screen over here and my camera's here, so you might see my head swirling around as I look at notes as well as I go through this. Okay, so in Roll20 you have everything laid out. So you've got some Roll20 tips first of all. It's kind of handy, it tells you how to do a bunch of stuff, change maps, roll initiative, and things like that. And then some more tips as well here about dynamic lighting example, token page. This is all the tokens laid out. You can also grab them from a menu here on the right, as I'll show later. That's like all the people, all the monsters that appear. And even a blank battle map. If there's a time where you just kind of need a map but don't have a map, you can kind of just plonk them here. It's supposed to be like a parchment. It looks a bit like a desert actually. It looks quite cool. Different to the one they used to use and I'm used to using. If you go back to also, you'll see that every chapter is laid out. Each folder is laid out as every chapter. So you've got the Barovia map and Circle Encampment. Chapter 3 is the Village of Barovia, so you've got the various Village of Barovia maps, including Death House, Castle Ravenloft, all the maps. They have the isometric ones from the book. They also have these top-down ones. I'll show you some of those later on, because there's a change I may need to make to one of them. And so on and so on. You've even got the card reading, which I'll get to later as well. Okay, so I want to show a map that has dynamic lighting, so let's go to Castle Ravenloft. Let's go to the ground floor map. As you can see here, if you're used to the book, you've got things like the hidden gargoyles. I say hidden because they're statues. You've got the red dragon wormlings at the entrance. I'm going to just grab a token that I added once. Where is my silly token I made? There we go. So I once made a token that is like a satyr druid. Hang on, let me do this so you can see it big. So I made this for another video, and now I, for a laugh, sometimes include them in some of my videos. So the map looks dark because dynamic lighting isn't in play. Let's just say my character, for the sake of this, has dark vision. You can kind of set it here. And then you'll see suddenly, oh, it's all bright. And that's the perspective of what the character can see at the moment. So that's Control L on a PC. I don't know what the Mac equivalent is. So my character wanders over, opens a door. You can restrict movement as well, by the way. Let's say yes, and then characters can't accidentally like go through a wall. They open these doors. You can mark them as locked and secret. Back when I joined Roll20, the doors and windows feature wasn't in play. You just had to do like a different color line and then just move the door out of the way. So it's great now you can have actual doors. And then as you can see, if I go back to the perspective, they can now see into this room. And then if they open these doors, they can see in here. And then if you're curious to know how it looks as a setting, I think you can say join the game as a player, and then you can see how the player would actually see it. The player wouldn't see all these gargoyles. That's just for your reference as the DM. Until you do, say, the GM layer and then move them to the token layer, and then a gargoyle has appeared. There you go. And you can also do Fog of War instead, which some people prefer. A good example of this is if I go to the Barovia map, when they haven't got access to the full map, zoom right out, and they arrive in the east of Barovia, there should be a setting here in the map settings. So hide, reveal, mask on, and then what happens then is, say if you've got a token there, that's just how you ping, by the way, you hold down the mouse button. Say if you want to reveal an area, so they've just arrived into the village of Barovia, notice that that's clear now, so if they had their token there, they move along, and then as they get to say here, you might want to do that, and as they get to here, and maybe the fog lifts out the way a bit and they can see more in the distance, they can see here. You've also got a measuring tool that appears on all the maps and shows. So in this version, I think rules is written, Barovia is 1 hex per quarter of a mile. So you can see here that 4 hexes is 1 mile, 2 hexes is half a mile. I think they've said 0.3 there because they've rounded up. But yeah, and you can kind of figure out how long it takes them to get to places like that. What else to show you? The compendium then, so say if you don't own the book, this section here, I should probably run through these one at a time. So this is the chat window, you can talk, you can do manual dice rolls, things like that. Here you can add additional tokens and people, like you can add your own monsters, you can add more tokens. One of those is Strahd's Black Carriage, which I found online somewhere. And then compendium, so you've got the information and the credits, you've got the introductions, it's just like how the book shows it. So if I click here, introduction for the story, there's the foreword by Tracy Hickman, I think his name is. Yep. If you're familiar with the book, you'll know all these. And then chapter 1 includes a picture of Strahd there. Fortunes of Ravenloft gives you information about the card reading, the adventure hooks, and so on. You'll see it's exactly laid out how it is in the book. And if you go near the bottom, you've got the appendices, you've got treasure, and the treasure, it shows you, it's automatically got things like things that can be found in the module are included as standard, like the blood spear. I think that's found at Yester Hill. It's got the information there, similar as it would do in the, well, depending on where it's either the Curse of Strahd book or the Dungeon Master's Guide if it's a more generic item. Like Durn's Instant Fortress is a more generic magic item, it's not specific just to Curse of Strahd, whereas I think the blood spear is, and so on and so on. And then you get all of the creature tokens as well. So there's Babala Saga, and when you click on each of them, you should get all the lore that you get in the book, like in her appendix, all the writing there, her traits, her spell slots, and it kind of doubles up as their stat block as well. So anyone who's not already added to a map, if I show you, I think I showed you earlier with the Ravenloft one, Castle Ravenloft, it shows all the people. If I say go to Berez, if I can find it, Ruins of Berez, Babala Saga's hut, you'll see that Babala Saga's already added, and so is the Creeping Hut token. But you've got a choice to say if Babala Saga sees them and fights them somewhere else, you can add the token, copy and paste it from the map, or grab it from this menu. Music. So as standard, you have tabletop audio in here. Tabletop audio is great. They've even got some song titles with the word Barovian in them. So it's like the guy who does the music. Barovian Castle is great. I recommend it. It's theme music in my music Curse of Strahd video. And you can add these to the game. And I don't think they count towards your storage. It's only when you add additional songs, whether like you get the music only versions from Tabletop Audio's Patreon or adding other music, that it counts towards the storage, but I might be wrong there. And there's also Kevin MacLeod in Compotech has some great music as well, if you prefer his music over Tabletop Audio, for example. It's all good stuff. These are macros, and I was going to cover this later, the multi-sided tokens, which are the rollable tokens. I'll show those later, where you don't have to have 3 different versions of a werewolf, you can have just one. In fact, I can show it on Baba Saga. Baba Saga can transform into a swarm of insects. So you can just do that, right click, multi-sided, and choose. So when she then changes back, does that. I'll show it again with the werewolf later as well. And then settings, where you can change your audio, video, your name. There's the transmogrifier, which I mentioned, I think, I'll mention in the FAQ section, keyboard shortcuts, dice options, and so on. You've also got this bar over here where you can draw shapes and lines, add text. This can be good for if they're like cues and reminders, add in the GM layer that remind you of something that the players can't see. I don't use the effects, but I think you can, you can do things like that. The dynamic lighting, so you can, when you're on dynamic lighting layer, you can add things like torches, doors and windows. The thing I showed you just now, where you can kind of hide and reveal a map if you're doing fog of war. The measuring tool, showing you how far it is. The turn order for when you roll initiative, and you add the tokens. Let me show you how that looks. So you add Babala Saga. So Babala Saga's in there. She rolls her turn. And you can roll here as well. So say somebody does an attack and it's 2d8, and then that's appeared in the chat. So that rolled 10. Things like that. And you can do a whole bunch there that way. Okay, stuff to watch out for and some tips. So let's go back to the compendium and let's go back to NPCs. So I've got something in the way of my screen at exactly this point, so it's quite hard to navigate around. Let's go to Rictavio. Now, Rictavio is Dr. Rudolf van Richten in disguise, but the Rictavio token shows Dr. Rudolf van Richten. So, and he's described in his disguise, Rictavio is described as a half-elf bard. If you use this token and show this token, people are going to say, that doesn't look like a half-elf bard. That looks a bit like Van Helsing or something like that, which he is sort of like the Ravenloft version of, the cool sort of monster vampire hunting scholar. So I recommend for Rictavio, you change the token. There's some great fan art online. I remember one great version where it's done side profile like Van Richten. He's not smiling, or maybe there is a smiling version. It's just almost like the exact, he looks exactly like this, but as a half-elf bard in the same sort of drawing style as well. So that could be a cool one to use. And then you can add in tokens through this part here. You can upload a token. There's a great tool called Token Stamp as well. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description where you can make your tokens that even have the sort of cool D&D style border, where it's kind of like mostly orangey red and then yellowy in the top left corner. You can use that, and you can sort of make your own tokens and add them in. So I'd probably recommend doing that. You might also want to consider changing some of the names of tokens. I think by default tokens aren't shown to people, but a great example, if I go back to that map where I put my Satyr Druid on, so Strahd's token says, let's zoom in, Strahd von Zorovich Illusion. And I remember a DM got caught out once because he liked to show the labels. I think there's a feature or setting you can do where it shows the labels to players, so they've got a constant reminder of what the monster is or what the NPC is named, for example. And then they walked in and they said, this is an illusion of Strahd, which kind of gave the game away straight away. So just be careful if you do things like that. You might want to make sure that feature is off, or if you use that feature, you might want to rename tokens and just change it to Strahd or Strahd von Zorovich. They don't know it's an illusion. That's when they arrive into the castle, and if you're doing the dinner, rules as written, the dinner invitation, he's an illusion, he's not the real Strahd. Let's have a look at multi-sided tokens. So it makes sense to show the werewolf then. So if I just go to a werewolf that currently looks like a person, let's use this one, Skenis, by wolves. Sometimes when you load a map as well, it's a bit blurry to start with while it loads. Don't let that worry you, it should get a bit more crisp in a minute. If it doesn't, I would just go off the map and maybe go back onto it. But choose sides. So Skenis has... I'm taking forever to... Oh, there we go, the map's working now. So Skenis is a werewolf. For some reason there's a fourth one where he can be a woman werewolf as well. But maybe this is a bad example. Here we go, let's just use one of these werewolves here. There'll probably be 3 versions, yes. Still showing the guy, never mind. So basically what I used to do is I used to have the wolf version and the werewolf version separately as tokens in the GM layer. And then if they change forms, I had to swap them in. I had to make sure the HP was correct, stuff like that. And it was silly and it took ages. And I had no idea about this multi-sided token business. And as soon as I discovered it, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. And you can create your own as well. So say if you did, I talked about Rictavio earlier, you could do a multi-sided token that's Rictavio and Van Richten, and you can make that yourself rather than say having to swap the tokens around. But yeah, I recommend this if you're running things like any shape changes, anyone who might have more than one version. So that would be things like the werewolves, the wereravens, Babylon Saga, Strahd as well. If we find Strahd, let's just pull Strahd in. Strahd visits the werewolf den. Yep, there he is. Hello. That's not the accent I use for Strahd. Choose side. He can transform into a bat, a wolf, or a cloud. Oh, that is cool. I've never seen that before. That token. That must be new. Or a cloud of mist, and the token they've used. Whoa, that's awesome. That's the cloud of mist they've used for Strahd. But you can change into a bat or a wolf, and it even changes the size automatically, I think, as well. So you can see now the bat is smaller because it's a tiny creature. So there you go, he flies, appears between the werewolves, and then he's like, hello, I'm Strahd. Yeah, and then his name goes all funny because we've got multiple people's names there. So yeah, and then the extra maps you might want to consider. So this has every map from the book pretty much. You've got Barovia, you've got different maps of different things. I recommend you may want to have, say for instance, people have made fan-made maps of, for Yester Hill and Berez, their maps are larger. I think for Yester Hill, each square is, I thought it was 50 feet. This is saying 25. Interesting. Yeah, one square is 50 feet. Oh, I don't think this has been configured properly. So if you wanted to change this, you go to the settings. Yeah, they made a mistake here. So you want to say style distance 50 in the map settings, because if you look at the bottom, it says 1 square equals 50 feet. And then now if we do the measuring tool, there you go, 2 squares is 100 feet, 200 feet, and so on. So there we go. And you might want to have, there's fan-made maps that show this sort of top area. It's taken a while to load the map properly, but we just have to wait it out. Not usually take this long, it's just a bit of a funny one. So yeah, there's like fan-made maps at the top where it shows, you know, where you fight the druids and the berserkers, where every square is 5 feet, so you may want to add one of those in. You might want to add in Svarlich Road random encounters, you know, the random encounters from when they're traveling from place to place, just some like map people. I recommend some map people in a minute, by the way. Barovian houses, I think you've got in Barovia, you have got, let's have a look. I've forgotten how everything works all of a sudden. There we go. Village of Barovia, you've got the Village of Barovia as a whole, you've got Death House, and then you've got the church, but you might want the Burgomaster's Mansion, you might want the tavern, you might want the shop. You could add those in as well. What if they go in a random house? I think you see some of the houses are empty, some of the houses have swarms of rats in them. Same with Vallaki, you might want to just add in some random houses that people might have made. where they make it online for free or through something like Patreon. You might want to do more space south of Van Richten's tower for when the werewolves attack. So if we go to the Van Richten's tower. So Van Richten's tower, if you look at that map, it's like it is in the book, where kind of like on top of each other. But then the werewolves might come, and there's really not much space here. So I've seen some maps that kind of expand the south of the tower a bit, like the peninsula part. And I used one once where there was a battle, not with werewolves, but something else I kind of homebrewed. And similar for outside the winery, the big epic battle with all the needle blights, I think they are, memory serves. Again, there's not a lot of room. You've got the basement there. And that's the ground floor. So you've got like literally, look at all of them. Hey guys. You've got like no rooms. You might want to have, I saw a great version of a map once where there's multiple these days. I think at the time when I used it, I'd use like someone's hand-drawn one and try and fit that into Roll20. That was fun. Sarcastic. And yeah, so you got more room then. I think it was like to the north of it, and there was like vines and stuff where like some of the needle blights could hide, or the people could hide. It was good fun. Similar to Yester Hill, Berez. I think each square, where are you hiding, Berez? There you are. The Berez main map, I think it says each square is 100 feet, which is marked properly on this map. But you might want a version of, there's people who've done versions of these ruins at 5 feet squares, and this part 5 feet squares, and the old church at 5 feet squares, and Marina's monument, I think is called 5 feet squares, and so on. So you might want to have those in addition to this. Use this as kind of like the traveling through, but then when there's an encounter with a monster, perhaps you bring out the map where it's 5 foot squares. And in terms of suggested cartographers, DM Andy, I think, is the most popular. He's great. There's another one I saw once called Aeon Bar Cartography. Used to be 2 women called the Dungeon Madams who used to do maps, but I don't think they do anymore, which is a shame. So you have a look online or in the Curse of Strahd community. If you go to the Curse of Strahd subreddit, and click on like maps, the maps flare it's called, or like tag or category, you can sort of flick through there and I'm sure you'll find some, or just search on Google or search on Reddit directly. I've got in my notes here that there's an issue with Castle Ravenloft, the floor with Escher on it. I wonder if it's still there. No, it looks like they fixed it. So a long time ago, these were all 10-foot squares instead of 5. It hadn't been configured correctly, but that looks like that's fixed. But if you're using an older version of Roll20, you might want to double check that in the castle. And then what you do is change the settings here. Instead of changing the grid distance, what you'd want to do, I think, is change how many squares there are or something like that. I can't remember how I did it. Or cell width, maybe, in order to make sure. Because that says cell width half. So if you load it and you see cell width 1, yeah, this is how it used to look. So they were actually done as like 10-foot squares. As you can see here, that's like, whoa, giant Escher. Escher there only appears in one corner because he's 5 foot by 5 foot. So if you are using an older version of this and you notice that, come here, change cell width to 0.5, job's a good one. Also, I should have mentioned earlier, old versions of the wereraven token, these days, if I find it, it shows as an actual wereraven, but it used to be Danica's face, so that's a big spoiler. So again, if you're using an old version of Roll20, of Curse of Strahd on Roll20, double check that. And then finally the Tarokka reading, which I've never actually run through here. I bought the cards, the actual physical cards, and then had like a camera pointing down. And we play Roll20, but we use Zoom for the audio in the video rather than Roll20's own solution. And I had a second Zoom camera, the one on my laptop and then one on my phone pointing down. And I don't actually know how you do the card reading here. I think it's through these rollable tokens. So you've got like here, where did I think I've gone past it? Decks, the common cards and the high deck cards. So So there's some information here in the tip section about how the card deck works. Let's try and figure it out together. He says like, oh. Decks are found in the collections tab. Yep, I'm looking at them now. Click the reveal button to show the deck. So say you do a common deck card. What's going on here? Deal 3 cards. Deal it to myself or all players. There you go. And then you've got guild member for number 1. Hoodie 1 for number 2. Enchanter for number 3. And then you do the high deck cards as well. So that's how it works if you do it in game. And you can shuffle, you can recall. Yeah, I'm gonna shuffle the deck. And so on. This is if you're doing it random. If you're doing it rigged, you might want to do it a different way. Maybe you can just grab the cards you want. So say if I want to have the monk card, can I just drag it? No. Maybe there's another way you can do it. You could maybe just put the cards ready and then GM layer them. And when it comes time, it's like, there we go. Something like that. And I think we'll wrap up there. And now time for some FAQs. Some questions I thought of that people might want to ask in terms of if they're thinking of buying this. I'll just kind of fly through them one at a time. There's about 4 of them. Do you need the Curse of Strahd book separate? No, because you've got the compendium in there, as I showed earlier. It's got everything that the book contains. You've got information on the chapters, information on the characters, the NPCs, if you will, information stat blocks for the monsters, and so on. So you could just buy it on Roll20 and not need anything else really. It's just all contained within it. Roll20. There are some people like me who do also like to have the book separate, or it might be that you bought the book first and then you want to buy it on Roll20. That does essentially mean you've got to buy it twice. There is apparently a maps version you can buy on Roll20, but I did hear some rumours online that it was quite buggy, but this is a few years ago now, so they might have fixed it. If anyone knows for sure, if anyone's tried using it and they found it buggy, or it's absolutely fine, especially if you used it recently, please drop a comment letting me and other viewers know. Do you need to buy Curse of Strahd on Roll20? Well, technically no. What you could do is just load up a blank game and add in all of the maps, but that is a huge undertaking and do a lot of time. The strength of Curse of Strahd on Roll20 is the fact that everything's already done for you. All the maps are in there, all the tokens are in there, all the information's in there. So it saves you time. I appreciate there's some people, if they bought the book, don't want to then buy it a second time on Roll20. That's your decision, I guess. But for someone like me, I'd rather just pay the money and have hours and hours and hours of time saved. But if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of money or is really reluctant to buy it twice, I guess you could just do the sort of manual way and upload everything, but it would take some time, so just be aware of that. Do you need to have a Roll20 subscription? So I thought the answer to this is no, because there is a free version. But I think I saw some whispers online of people saying that these days you do, that Roll20 made some sort of change. I did try and research this and couldn't get really a clear-cut answer. My understanding is that you can use it for free, but then you're limited on the storage. So if you want to add in more maps, you want to add in your own music, you are quite limited to how much you can do. So getting one of the subscriptions, Plus or Pro, allows you to do more things. I'm on Pro. In addition to things like more storage, you also get access to dynamic lighting, and there's a great tool called the Transmogrifier, heck of a fun word, where you can move maps and tokens and characters across games. Where this has been useful for me is I have sort of my main game, which is, I think I'm still using an old Curse of Strahd game, but even though I'm running a wider Ravenloft campaign these days, that's fit after Curse of Strahd. And I wanted, for example, to add a one-shot, or the maps and the tokens from a one-shot to add into my game. So I bought that on Roll20, loaded it as a game on Roll20, and then just like using the Transmogrify, ported it all across. So that's good. There's a page on there that shows the different memberships and shows what you get and what you don't get with each one. So if you're kind of thinking, should you, shouldn't you, might be worth having a look at that. And what other VTTs, virtual tabletops, are out there? Well, I've always used Roll20, but there's lots of others. 2 I've heard good things about are Fantasy Grounds and Foundry, which I think is also Touch Foundry. Foundry I've heard is the best. It's apparently just really great to use. It's got more features, however it's harder to use, both for, at least for the DM, possibly not so bad for the players, or maybe both. I'm kind of set in my ways. I'm kind of used to using Roll20 now, and I'm kind of happy to keep using it, even if there is something better out there, even if it does just take a bit of time to get used to Foundry. Maybe at one point I'll visit it, but at the moment me and my players are perfectly happy with Roll20, so I'm sticking with that. If you're new to all this, Roll20 is probably the way to go, because it's kind of a lot easier to use, it's more beginner friendly. You might want to dive straight into Foundry, and that's fine, I'm not going to stop you, but apparently it is harder. So if you're kind of umming and ahhing, maybe do Roll20 first of all, but I'll leave that decision up to you. D&D Beyond also has its own VTT these days, but I've heard it's still fairly early stages. One thing I was researching just recently is apparently you can't even snap to grid, which I consider like really basic, and they haven't even done that functionality yet, but they're kind of treating it as a work in progress and taking people's feedback on board, and if loads of people say, oh, we need to snap to grid, they'll prioritize that. So I'd be interested to know, actually, if anyone's watching has used the D&D Beyond version. I've not seen it, I've not touched it. I'd be curious to know what it's like, and if you've used Roll20 as well, how it compares. One thing I want to say as well is that apparently there's a bundle you can get where you can get both Curse of Strahd and Van Richten's Guide together and save, I think, something like $5 rather than buying them both separately. And I'm actually going to do a video similar to this one that shows Van Richten's Guide in Roll20 and kind of just gives a really quick sort of overview and, you know, tips of what you could add and things like that. And that's it for this one. I'm not sure when I'm going to publish this, so I'm going to be careful saying upcoming videos, because I might say this video's coming up and then I publish it before. But if you want to check out some of the other videos I've done, I think I've done about 20 Curse of Strahd videos now. I've got a playlist and you can just browse my channel. Any of the ones in the banner that have sort of purple on the side with white writing on are Curse of Strahd, the ones that are kind of the deeper red are Ravenloft. All sorts of things, mistakes DMs make, homebrew changes I liked when I ran it. I've got my controversial 3, which is sort of 3 videos where I go against the grain of what people consider like really popular Curse of Strahd advice and say, I don't agree. Things like that. So have a look and see what you think, and please subscribe. Depending on when this goes out, I've either just published or I'm about to publish a Curse of Strahd tips video, which I think will be really helpful to people who are new to Curse of Strahd and hopefully be a really popular video. And we'll finish there. Thank you, Mist Wanderers.